In 1985, Universal Pictures and 20th Century Fox released Brazil, a film listed as science fiction and comedy, though that designation is a bit misleading. It might be more appropriate to list the film as a dystopian, black humor parody of the real world. However, to do that, one might have to fill out a 27B/6, and who wants the grief from Central Services over that?
Terry Gilliam often refers to his film as 1984 and a half. It's a satire of bureaucratic technocracy and corporate statism, creating a Kafkaesque nightmare where fantasy is the only escape from a bleak, oppressive reality.
Brazil's a look into Terry Gilliam's mind, as his frustrations and commentary on bureaucracy bubble over into the absurd. It's in this landscape that the humor, often dark, is able to thrive and bring relief to the viewer.
Though the country Brazil is never a part of the film, the once hit pop song is an ever-present reminder of a far-off place that beckons you to return in your dreams.
In 2004, Total Film named Brazil the 20th greatest British movie of all time. Channel 4 voted Brazil one of the 50 films you need to see before you die, and Empire magazine ranked it at 84 in their list of the 500 greatest films of all time.
And Wired magazine ranked Brazil number 5 in its list of the top 20 science fiction films, while Entertainment Weekly listed it as the 6th best science fiction film released since 1982, and number 13 on their list of the top 50 cult films.
Brazil was nominated for 2 Academy Awards for Best Original Screenplay and Best Art Direction, and has served as the inspiration for aspiring cinematographers ever since.
Gilliam's use of retro future tech was a mark of brilliance when you consider that it was set somewhere in the 20th century. It could literally take place anywhere in that time period with its 1930s and 40s Casablanca feel and style.
The use of excessive ductwork and malfunctioning state electronics are clearly a visually poignant poke at government ineptitude, which unsubtly lampoons oppressive state control.
The commentary on terrorism and its acceptance by the populace and the government's inability to prevent it is reminiscent of the bombing campaign of the IRA from the 1960s up to the early 1970s. If a bomb went off, the citizens in this world simply continued to eat amid the chaos surrounding them.
While some of the metaphor in the film is blatant and patently absurd, there is still nuance to be found in the pastiche of the heyday of film noir.
Our protagonist, Sam Lowry, is a bumbling cog in the machine of a state-run information-gathering agency known as Information Retrieval.
He often has silly dreams of being a godlike hero who metaphorically flies in to save a damsel in distress. All of these things being the complete opposite of his reality.
But even the real-world girl who resembles his fantasy is far from what exists in Lowry's head, as she's a tough, no-nonsense citizen seeking justice for a government mistake that cost the life of her neighbor.
There are some notable appearances in Brazil, including Robert De Niro as the renegade heating engineer Harry Tuttle. And Bob Hoskins plays an intimidating public works employee who has it out for Sam after being threatened with paperwork.
Katherine Hellman as Mrs. Ida Lowry, Sam's overbearing, plastic surgery-loving, often recklessly oblivious mother, has the distinct honor of being part of 2 shows we are talking about this season.
The prolific and accomplished actor Ian Holm plays the cowardly Mr. Kurtzman, which in German translates to short man. He is the true definition of middle management, who relies on the skills of a subordinate, our protagonist, to get things done, while allowing any possible blame to fall into Sam's lap.
And rounding off this cavalcade of great acting talent is Michael Palin, another Monty Python alumni, playing his most subversive and sinister role to date.
We would tell you more, but in order to do so, we need to fill out the requisite forms, get a receipt for said forms, and make sure that the government agent has a receipt for our receipt.
If you dare, join us as we discuss Brazil.
But make sure you filled out your 27B/6, or things could get messy.
Welcome to Popped. I'm Daniel, and joining me is my co-host Tanya and our guest host, Glenn. You may recognize Glenn's voice from radio, television, or a recent film preview. not a theme preview, it's a film preview, right? But if you've been keeping up with our show, you'll know his voice from our old intro. Glenn's been doing voiceover for some time, and we're very happy to have him joining us tonight. How you doing, Glenn?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you for having me back. This is
Absolutely.
exciting. We're going to be talking about Brazil.
Hell yeah. I've been excited to get you back, actually. It's been a while. The last time you were on was when we did our sound table. I think it was for teen films.
Yeah, we did, because I know we were talking about like a lot of the John Hughes films back
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah. I really enjoyed doing that. In fact, we need to get another sound table going. It's been a while. We're going to do one, I think, for Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
And that's going to be a free for all. I just figure we'll just have as many people on as we can and let chaos ensue.
That'll be great. That thing's 50 years old now.
Oof.
74 was when it was released. Wow.
How dare you?
Hey, it's almost as old as we are.
Oh, man. Thank you again for being here. It's funny because our new intro doesn't have your voiceover anymore. It's just we've had enough changes at this point where none of this stuff really works. And in order to get a solid intro, I've been cutting it as time has gone on. And at this point, there's not much more I can do unless you want to make more voice info.
We might have to get you a new intro, Daniel.
Well, I didn't want to just ask.
You don't want to ask during a show, but here, so
yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's like we haven't really had much time to talk. I think we've messaged a few times since the last time you were on. Life just gets in the way. Isn't that what Ferris Bueller said? Sometimes life just gets in the way.
Yeah, life. What was it? I think he was quoting the quote that was attributed to Lenin. Something along the lines of
you
life,
get busy making other plans. Yeah,
something like that. Life happens while you're busy making plans. I think that's what it is.
I think so. Tanya, how are you doing down there?
I am doing fabulous, Daniel.
Wonderful.
Yes.
I say down there because you're in Southern California, but also because you're on the bottom part of my screen. So
there's symmetry, at least. There
is symmetry. And before we go on and talk about what we're here to talk about, which is the film Brazil, I know we're all just raring to go on that. I want to mention the thing I always mention when we get here is like, subscribe, and interact, please. We really enjoy when you interact. We had someone named the Mixtape 11 interact with us on the video I just posted today, which is Nope. And the interaction is way too long to read here, but I did want to give a shout out. If you want to see that interaction, go over, watch the video, and read what he had to say. It's actually pretty insightful. So there you go. Yeah, I guess we can move on. Are we ready to talk about Brazil?
Let's talk about Brazil.
Ooh, all right. Let me fast forward to my talking points here. Actually, I have some notes. This is one of those heady films where there's so much happening that it'd be easy to just talk and get lost in the points you want to make or the things that are important to you. I think one of the things we always do when we start talking about a film is to say, where do you know this film from? When did you first see it? What impact did it have on you? And I'll give us kind of the start here, and then we can round robin it. But I saw Brazil when it came out in 1985. I was in high school, and I had a friend who was rather subversive himself, and got me into all the music that I still currently love. But I fell in love with it immediately when I saw it in the theater, despite how dark the film was. The idea of escaping reality by daydreaming was very appealing to me. And I empathize with Sam probably way more than I should have, especially after watching it now. But I was 14 years old. That's quite a bit to process back then. Maybe not for everybody, but I kind of bloomed a little late with that sort of thing. But I'm curious where you guys were when you first watched Brazil, and what did it mean to you? And we'll go ahead and start with our guest, Glenn. Give us your history with Brazil.
Well, what was interesting, I've always been a huge Monty Python fan. So that comes, my father got me into Monty Python. So I had always grown up with always look on the bright
Side of life.
So I had always had Python all the time on. And I didn't get it to see it in the theaters, but I did get to see it on VHS tape as a video rental in 1989. I was working at the Warehouse. We remember the Warehouse Records.
Yes.
I was working there. They had a video rental section, and I was going through films, and I said, Brazil, what's this? I turn around, I was like, it's Terry Gilliam. I'm like, it does all the animation for Monty Python, and he's one of the actors. I was like, oh, it also has Michael Palin in it. I'm like, okay, I have to watch this. And so I rented the movie, watched it, and was like, that is cool. And it definitely felt, it had that 1984 film noir, Art Deco. It kind of had all of that. So it kind of had all this really cool messaging. And I was like, this is an awesome film. It's like, I'm going to put that away and file it away. And then, of course, it got really, really filed away. And now we're talking like 30 years later. I'm like, oh, let's have a conversation about it. So it's been great because I did watch it. I realized I watched it probably about a decade ago, watched it again. And now I've been talking with my kids who now are in their 20s. They're, we're kind of talking about the themes and governmental themes and what authoritarianism looks like, especially with the upcoming election and everything. So it's really, it was really timely.
Yeah.
Which was really fascinating, is going back and rewatching it again and seeing how timely all of this is and all the themes of the film.
Right. It almost seems more relevant now, which is weird when you think about it. Yeah. Tanya, I'm curious, you're obviously very quiet down there, but that's fine. What does Brazil mean to you? Where were you when you first saw it? Go ahead.
Actually, very similar track to Glenn. I saw it on VHS. I was either a senior in high school or I had just started college, and a couple of friends of mine really were into the film, and they're like, oh, you have to watch it. And so we watched it one night on VHS, and I remember thinking it was super cool. I loved the visuals were amazing, and it was just such a film in general. I'd never seen anything like it before. I was struck by how dark it was. That really hit me because I was not really expecting that, just from what I had heard. And then I hadn't seen it in a long time, watched it again about 10 years ago, had other thoughts about it. And then I watched it again for our recording tonight and have completely different thoughts about it. It's totally evolved as my sensibilities and my just wisdom of the world has evolved. But it is, to echo what Glenn said, it is eerily and disturbingly predictive, which is, a little disconcerting.
That was actually going to be one of my questions, was when you saw it in the past versus seeing it today, as we mature, different things become important to us as a viewer. And we can get to that. I think one of the things that I wanted to mention that I didn't actually hit upon was the fact that there's two versions of this film. I bought the Criterion Collection, which has the Love Conquers All version. And this is extremely funny because it's my other favorite film that I love almost as much as this one is Blade Runner, or probably on par. And it also had a Love Conquers All version. And then there's the darker version, which is the director's cut, has like something like 40 some more minutes worth of footage in it. But even the Love Conquers All version, both of them are extremely dark, right? But as far as watching it now, I'm sitting here watching it. I started it last night and I finished watching it today because the director's cut is actually quite long. And it's something that struck me, and I wanted to ask you guys about that. So do you feel Why do you feel differently now, Tanya, watching it than you did when you were younger? And then I'll ask the same of you, Glenn, when she's given her answer.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, when I saw it, I was around 18, still naive, even though I thought that I knew everything. I really knew next to nothing at that point. Now that I'm a little seasoned and have seen a bit more and understand a bit more about how the world works. So in any case, yeah, but I noticed nuances that I didn't notice before, things that were important to me the first time around. I was much more interested in the contrast of like his daydreaming and the reveal at the end. That to me was like a very powerful thing. And now that I'm older, what interests me is the statecraft of it all and the propaganda that existed and all of the things that went along to that to me was very sort of prescient and poignant. Like when you look back on it, like it's so funny, when I was watching it, I was like, this movie was made in 1985 and he predicted militarism of police, the surveillance state. Like none of those things would have even been remotely thought about in 1985. Like that was something that was really shocking and jarring, as opposed to now where we almost find that to be normal. And if you saw it as someone today who had never seen it before, you'd be like, oh, it's just a parody of now. But like it wasn't.
It's like
So
the Patriot Act. You know.
exactly. Yes, thank you. Yes, I have things to say about that. I do.
All right, Glenn, I'm going to throw it over to you. Did you know, what do you notice different from when you first watched it to how you feel about it now? And what were those things that came up to you? You're like, oh, that's interesting that I feel this way about it.
I think the first time I watched it, I watched it as an art film. And it just kind of looked at it and kind of went, okay, how does this relate to 1984? Even though there's a lot of satire in it, I'm looking at it from that angle going, okay, I see some of it. And I see it then from maybe a justice point of view. Like, how can somebody come in and go, this is wrong, this isn't right? How do we make it right with this big behemoth bureaucracy that we're dealing with? And you see in the film, you see Sam trying to kind of subvert it to save Jill, right? He wants to kind of go through and he has an opportunity to kind of use his authority to then go, all right, I can save her, I can do this. And at first I used to think it was about justice. Like, oh, how can you make things right? And when I rewatched it like 10 years ago, it was like, this isn't about justice.
No.
It's like, he's just trying to, it's almost to the point, it's like, this is the girl I dream about. And it's like, that's it. I'm like, dude, you're just chasing for a piece of tail. That's all you're doing here.
Yeah.
And then rewatching it now, fast forward 10 years and I watch it again and start to look at it in the whole picture, is like, you still have the bureaucracy. You still have all of the same challenges that we had back then. However, the difference is you start to look at the different characters. You look at Tuttle, De Niro's character, and you look at him, that he just goes, I work outside the system. I do what I want. This is how I do it. I get in, I get out, and I don't have to mess with paperwork. And he's like, I do it my way, and that's what I'm doing. And you start to see Sam Lowry doing the same thing. He goes, oh, wait, I can do these other little things. I can go to the top. I know someone. The Helpman is in love with his mother, so he gets some favors there. And you start to see Sam coming out and as somebody who is kind of bucking the system. The system's there, and it kind of shows you, to get through the system and live with the system, you have to subvert the system or live outside of the system to really thrive.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's what really hit me is, okay, you have this behemoth and this machine. How do you operate outside of that machine?
That's a cool perspective. What I like about that perspective is it almost like gears. It like the reason and the reasoning of what I thought back then and what I thought now almost fits perfectly into that. Um, when I was younger, I had not read 1984 at that point when I first saw it. So this was a whole new experience for me. And I just saw an oppressive system and this little guy, Sam, I saw him as this heroic character. And I watch it now and I think he's a selfish little bastard.
Yeah, he's a whiny little
he's
prick.
A bumbling idiot. He's a bumbling idiot who has more to do with like, and obviously we've got spoilers in this, folks. If you haven't seen Brazil, please watch it before you finish this up because we're going to just spoil the hell out of this film. I mean, it was made in 1985, so you've had some time. I'm just saying. But I think he's more responsible for Jill's death than any government agency ever was. He bumbles his way through, and I mean, he drops her file all over the place. And as you said, he's doing it to chase a piece of tail. You don't see any altruism really from him, except for very brief flashes of it. And those only come after he realizes, oh well, this is what you're supposed to be doing here. It's almost like he compartmentalizes everything. I don't know. I don't want to go too far off topic there, but
well, who he reminds me of is Hank Azaria's character in Mystery Men. When he plays the Blue Raja? I'm the Blue Raja. Silverware. It reminds me of almost him. It's like, Mom, stop it! He's an adult, but still beholden to his mother.
Yeah.
So he's still a mama's boy, never grew up, and his mom got him everything that he needed.
Yeah, so there's something that I don't want to forget to approach. Obviously, there's a sort of a Freudian connection in there when he finally sees his mom in what I can only assume is his mind slipping as he's being tortured. And his mom has de-aged so much with Dr. Jaffe's help that she looks like Jill.
Yeah.
What did you take from that? Because it's one of the things that I've never really been able to put a finger on. I don't know if Gilliam was trying to make a Freudian commentary there, or if Sam was just so oblivious that he didn't even realize that she was looking like Jill. What do you guys think of that?
Well, it was an interesting. It's an interesting kind of piece because when she looks like Jill, he's lost his mind. So he's already lost his mind when that happens because he falls in the coffin, comes down, ends up in the house. They come back out and they have the house in the countryside, and he's like, okay, happily ever after, living with Jill. And then you realize, no, he's sitting in the chair. and his brain is gone, and he's just humming the Brazil song. That's all he's doing. And I think that's where it comes, Mom, one last chance to go, Mom, Mom, Mom. And she's like, go away, leave me alone. Because she has all of her suitors, and she looks like Jill. So it's almost at the same time, his mother is, in his mind, his mother is saying, leave me alone, you're no longer welcome here. And at the same time, Jill is saying the same thing to him.
So, again, like, along with what you said, and my thinking as a child or a teenager, I guess, that Sam was the hero. Nowadays, I'm looking at it and I'm realizing the actual hero was Harry Tuttle, who was only saved because a bug, landed at the right time in the right piece of paperwork. But, he's also, he's a renegade, and he definitely is a subversive character. Tanya, when you hear these things, what comes to mind for you? Who did you find a hero in this, or do you think that it's just such a dark, oppressive story that there really is no hero? It's more a matter of just commentary on something.
For me, it was much more just commentary on something. I can see where Tuttle being the hero could be something that a lot of people would think. I personally did not get that, even though he was more independent, obviously, and was willing to live outside the system in a way that other people didn't feel that they were able to do. It was admirable and a survival technique, but heroic is maybe going a little too far, in my opinion.
Fair enough. He very unsubtly disappears at one point in the film, and he's gone for good in the film. Obviously, at this point, Sam's lost his mind, and pieces of paper start sticking to him. Receipts, obviously, which are a big part of this story. Sam has, with Tuttle, blown up information retrieval. As you said, Glenn, he becomes somewhat of a subversive himself and is trying to buck the system. But I mean, it's a little too late, and he bumbles his way through stuff. And at this point, he's already lost his mind anyway. But seeing De Niro or Tuttle start to get these pieces of paper on him, I remember the first time I watched this film, I got angry because I'm like, oh no, not Tuttle. And then the metaphor hit me like a brick. I was like, oh, that's why he did that. But it still angered me when I first saw it. Wait, I mean, do you think there's any other way to do that? Does it have to be that unsubtle, or do you think they should have kept that?
What do you mean, kept what?
Him disappearing into the paperwork, so to speak, as the metaphor, or do you think they could have played that a different way without being, basically hitting us over the head with a metaphor?
I think sometimes audiences need to be hit over the head with it. And I think if you age this, because obviously we're almost at 40 years with this film, you're looking at that. It kind of needs to say, hey, this is all, it's all part of the bureaucracy anyway. It's like the paperwork's going to get you in the end. And I mean, you think about it. You think about what happens when somebody dies in real life, right? You die in the United States. What happens? The first thing that happens, the state comes to look at your estate to see what monies are owed, and they go through your estate and take everything that's there. There's loads of paperwork. You can't do anything without a death certificate.
That's true.
And you can consider that as a receipt. So the same type of thing is, even in death, you're just imbued with paperwork.
Yeah. My sister had to deal with a lot of paperwork after my father passed, but something we both got to share was when the Social Security Administration sent us a check, with what their dollar value amount of essentially what my dad's life was worth, I guess. It was one of the most surreal moments of my life to look at this check and see an actual dollar amount, So yeah, it's going to get you at some point, and when it hits you, whether or not you're ready for it, it's overwhelming.
It's like, and you can even put it back to when, here's the refund check. Please take this back to Mr. Buttle's wife.
Right.
You go, oh, we screwed up. We killed your husband, but here's the money that we took because they have to pay for Jack's torture. You have to pay for that. So here's your refund. Sorry.
Yeah. Tanya, you're muted.
So even with regards to the paperwork, I also found it very interesting. There's a moment where Sam is trying to, after he gets his promotion, he's trying to push one of his paperworks up the tube and get it to go someplace. And there's a clog, and it's all this paperwork that is stuck, and it all coming out. And then, so that's a bureaucracy. They're so reliant on paperwork. No one noticed their paperwork didn't get where it was going. No one noticed that there was something missing. It's like it's a bureaucracy just for the sake of bureaucracy. It's bureaucracy meets complete and utter ineptitude, which is the worst combo possible.
Well, you see that when Jill shows up trying to get information for her neighbor, well, you have to go to that department. I was at that department. Well, do you have this form? She pulls it out, says, oh, you need to have a stamp on that. I can't help you. And you have a stamp on that. Where do I get that? From that department. It's just a endless cycle of maddening bureaucracy. And I know that was really part of Gilliam's commentary. I don't know. I think bureaucracy is a necessary evil, but when it gets to be that oppressive, that bad, it just that's like, it's the warning that we should all pay attention to. You know, it's okay to have some government services, but you shouldn't be so overburdened with them that you can't function. And there's a lot of government waste and energy you put into filling out forms. You know, I could go into personal experiences, but my mother deals with it all the time as an elderly person trying to live off of Social Security. And in order to get anything done, or she has to live within a certain amount of money, a certain amount of means, or they reduce the benefits. She can't afford the rent where she lives, but the people who own the apartment that she lives in, they have worked the rent to where they know exactly when she's getting a Social Security raise, so they can raise it just that much. And she has $20 to live off of for the entire month. It's insane.
Wow. It's you mentioned that, like, bureaucracy, the same thing is, if you want to take it to the next step, what was reminding me is there's times when you see a staircase that goes up to a wall, like a concrete staircase, and then just here's the wall. And you go, that staircase just goes to the wall. And you go, why is that there? Was there a door there before? And if you were to look at the plans show the staircase going to the wall. And somebody on the crew goes, hey, is this wrong? The staircase goes right to the wall. And the foreman says, you're not paid to think. You're paid to do whatever's on the plans that were approved by the city. So shut your pie hole and get to work on building those stairs.
Besides,
like, it doesn't go anywhere.
Mrs. Winchester wants it there anyway.
Yeah, well, that's hey, private pay, do whatever you want.
Sometimes you're just insane.
Sometimes you are just insane, but that just kind of reminded me of some of those pieces. And it's funny because I had my roof redone a couple of weeks ago, and they had put some of the venting that goes from the attic in the wrong place. And I told them, I'm like, don't put it there. It's in the wrong place. And of course, I came back to check anything, and they put it in the wrong place. Mm-hmm. And the wrong place was basically in a gable that doesn't go anywhere. It's not even connected to the attic. So it's basically, here's this opening that you've opened in the roof that goes basically to an empty space that is not an attic or nothing. There's nothing in there. There's nothing to pull out or vent. And I finally had to go, hey, that was in the wrong place. And this is where it is. And it goes, I don't understand. I'm like, come out. And I'm going to bring you into the attic, and I'm going to show you, and we're going to go through all of it, that this was supposed to be done before. And it was, finally they saw it and goes, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And I said, yes, this is why sometimes plans need to be questioned, and it's okay for plans to be questioned.
They thought it was your Hobbit torture room.
They did think it was my Hobbit torture room.
But they're not paid to think.
We have to talk about that later too. There's Mr. Ian Holm too.
Absolutely, we will talk about him.
Sorry, not Mr. Sir Ian Holm.
Sir Ian Holm. Yes.
Let's
talk about some of the things we really liked about this film. I mean, I know we're talking about, you know, how dark it was and this, that, and the other, and you can like it being dark. That's absolutely fine. But I want to talk about things that really popped out to you. And for me, one of the most important things I took away from Brazil that had nothing to do with story, had nothing to do with plot, was that stylistically, this is probably one of my favorite films of all time to watch. And I mean, I know Gilliam is famous for the way he forces perspective and really puts you in the eye. The camera is sort of the eye that follows, and the camera is telling a story as well. But some of these forced perspective shots, one of my favorite ones is when Sam gets his promotion and he walks through those doors the first time, and the camera is looking directly down from this great height, and you see him walk in and just cast the shadow into information retrieval and start walking in. I get goosebumps when I see that shot. I know people usually don't get goosebumps when they see a film shot, but I'm one of those people. I love that. Was there something stylistically that appealed to you, Tanya? Why don't we start with you on this?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just the art design in general. The art design and the costume design I thought were both brilliant. The building structures were very Stalinist, that and very sort of mustachio man of that same era ish. Just evidence of the state being in control of the citizens and not the other way around. I thought that was a lovely touch. I loved the highway. That's what struck me, I think, substantially, was the highway that they're driving down, and it's totally blocked off with these advertisement billboards of all these beautiful things, and around them is just, it's completely barren, because like locusts, they came through and just consumed and consumed and consumed, so there was nothing left, and all they could do was advertise the crap products that were left in the world. And then the costume design I thought was great. There was a moment where that I feel like it must have been inspiration for a Snowpiercer moment with Tilda Swinton, where she was like, would you wear a shoe on your head? Like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, I bet money that that's where this came from. But you can see the ripples of just the visuals that occur throughout the film through even movies today. I feel like it was groundbreaking in so many ways.
Yeah, didn't Joe versus a volcano have some sort of play on that too with the billboards? There was some other film we did where they covered up stuff with billboards as well. I can't recall it off the top of my head, but yeah, that was a great scene. I remember looking at that too, and there was another scene too where they were showing these big pipes, look like nuclear vent chambers or something, and then that guy's face pops up from behind him. It's brilliant. So Gilliam. I don't want to take it away from Glenn though, because I actually want to know from you what stylistically appealed to you in this film as well.
Well, something that really came back in some of the dream sequences is like one of the first dream sequences is where he's flying and those big monoliths start coming out of the ground. It kind of gave a nod to Gilliam's Crimson Permanent Assurance, where you had where it was all the accountants, all the accountancies, or all the accountants are in the building and they kind of go, we're taking it over, and all the old guys take it over and they're driving the building around and it's going through all the buildings. It just kind of reminded me of that. Like, here's all the stuff that's in the way, and here's business. But in this specific one, it's for our protagonist, for Sam. It's kind of as he's flying, it's like it's in the way. You can't get to where you need to go. And then he's like, oh, I need to, it's like, what's happening? Well, this big warrior, I need to fight the warrior. And now he's trying to go, this is how I get to Jill, who he didn't know at the time, because that was just who happened to be in his dream. Which then kind of, so that was, that was a piece there where the monoliths are coming up, and I'm like, okay, there's that. The propaganda that's throughout the film, which is just kind of like, hey, if you think your neighbors are doing something, tell on them. It just definitely goes back to like the Gestapo propaganda and how, it's like, how do you get people to tell on their neighbors? It's like, ooh, they might be doing something shady. You should check them out. And it's like, they might be a terrorist, because you have this whole terrorist thing that's going on in the background. I know we mentioned that before, that people will continue to eat. He's at dinner with his mother, and there's a terrorist bombing that blows up part of the restaurant. Mm-hmm. And they just carry on like nothing's going on. And it's almost, what I almost saw was, it's because his mother is one of the elites in society, if not one of the most elites, because Helpman is in love with her. Mm-hmm. It's almost to the part where she's untouchable. So she doesn't care what's happening. So it's almost like, oh, well, we don't care because the peasants over there. And you're like, well, wait, this is the upscale 5-star Michelin rated restaurant, right? And whatever happens to everybody else, we don't care.
Yeah.
And so I really kind of thought that. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. The propaganda really stood out. That was really something that continued. And one of the sections, like one in the beginning, they were kind of giving the tours. of the front part of information retrieval, or just the front of the building. Like you go into the building and all the nuns are in front of where one of the officers is there, and he goes like, I'm trying to remember what he said, something along the lines of, this is, a subcompact machine gun, and we use this, and the nuns are like, oh, that's really neat. And you're just going, you start to look at that conversation that's being had there, and it just keeps kind of, I guess what it does for me is visually, like, I love it. Visually, it's stunning. And at the same time, you mix it with the propaganda, and it almost seems like it's, from an architectural standpoint, you have Art Deco and brutalism, like in the same place. Because anytime you see brutalism, it always feels destitute. It feels, for me, it feels destitute. It feels uncaring, unloving. It feels cold. And I know that was really something that kind of hit me, especially now that I'm thinking, I'm like, it's a film. It's like the more we talk about the protagonist, like, who's the good guy? Is there a good guy? And it's like, no, there's no good guy. It's like a lot of the Tarantino's films, right? You're like, there's no good guy in nobody's good in the film. Everybody is like shades of bad. Whether you should be drugged behind a car versus whether you should get a slap on the hand. It's like no one is good, inherently good. But at the same time, there are people who are inherently evil that are in there. Yeah. And that's where this kind of really kind of sits interestingly, especially with Michael Palin's character playing Jack.
Who turns out to be the true villain in this story, if you think about it.
Correct. Yeah, he is the true villain, and you look at him, and he's the one that has it all together. And it's almost reminds me, if you slapped a little tiny black mustache right here on him, you could have the Hitler. I mean, seriously, you kind of put it back in there. What was it? I know we've seen this. This is probably 20 years ago. It was a big thing on the internet, and they go, hey, let's list traits of world leaders. And they had two lists, and I could totally be screwing this up. So if you've heard it differently, please let me know. But it was along the lines of, somebody says this person is, has traditional family values. They're vegetarian. They do these, it's like they love their family. They go to church. They do all these things. Somebody else, this person's a drunk. They drink whiskey from morning, from morning to night. They're foul-mouthed. They're abusive. They're this. And you go through all these different values, and you go, who would you like to lead your country?
Yeah, the vegetarian one was Hitler, right?
And the vegetarian one was Hitler, right? And you're going, this is Hitler, and the other one might have been like FDR or something like that. And right. you kind of put them together. It was Truman or somebody. Anyway, it was one of those, and you go, who would you prefer? And if you look at values and how people live their life, you go, ooh, I totally don't want to. It doesn't necessarily, the way someone lives their life doesn't necessarily reflect the values that they have.
Until it does, but yes.
Until it does. But it's like that was kind of one of the things, because he's the family man. Oh, everything's great. Here's my pretty wife, and I've got triplets, and here's the kids. And that actually was his daughter that was in the film. That's
yeah, and after he came out with the blood all over when Sam walked into the office, that was Gilliam's daughter. That's so cool.
Gilliam's daughter that's in there. That was cool. But that shows too. He's in there. He's washing his hands. He's like, yeah, I just killed somebody, and I'm washing my hands, and my daughter's playing, and
show me your dolly, daughter.
Yeah. And it's the which also this was something that I saw, which reminds me, in that moment there, Jack turns around and gives Sam his Christmas present.
Oh yeah.
Right? And he goes, here's your Christmas present. That Christmas present, if I'm not mistaken, is the same Christmas present that was in the box that Jill had, that she had gotten, and she had that paper, she had the present. She goes, it's a present, and it's in the box.
That was everybody's present, though, wasn't it? That little wind-up triangle that dropped down between yes and no. because
Well,
even the guy next door had one as well. It seemed like everybody, and the guy at information retrieval at the front desk also had the same exact thing. And you just winch up the little triangle and then you drop it to land on yes or no.
Well, Jill had, because she pulled it back, and he's like, you are the terrorist, when that bomb went off in the department store. You are the terrorist.
But I love you.
But I love you. And it's like, I hate you, and you're the terrorist, and you're bad. And she's just like, how could you hurt all these people? She goes, here's your bomb. And she pulls the thing and she throws it at him, and he pulls it out, and it's the same gift.
Yeah.
And he's kind of looking at it, and she goes, it's a bribe.
Yeah, for cuckoos like you and the government. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, and then you see at the same time, Jack gives him the same gift. And you're like,
Yeah.
something
Causality. It goes in a circle there. Absolutely. Good points, man. Good points. There's stylistically that was a good topic to go on, because all of us were somewhat influenced by the style of this film. Tanya, did you give your opinion on that?
I did.
You did. Okay. I was just trying to remember where I'm at here. Favorite scene. That's where I was going. Everybody, when I talk to people about this film, almost always they tell me about a specific moment in time. For some people, it was the Central Services scene with Robert De Niro. For some people, it was the torture room, because it stuck with them for so long. Personally, for me, it's when Sam gets promoted up from the newsroom, or the room where all the stuff's going on, to his new office, and he gets to that door, and you're thinking, oh wow, he's got the promotion, and that door opens, and it's half of a room with half of a desk, half of a poster on the wall, and somebody is on the other side of the wall sharing that desk. To me, this is the kind of slapstick that harkens back to Jacques Tati, one of my favorite slapstick performers of all time. But that for me is probably when that moment happens in the film is when I laugh the hardest. Is there a moment that in this film that really sticks out with you? Tanya, I'm going to start with you. What moment really appealed to you in this film?
If you had asked my 18-year-old self, it would have been the end. But I actually found through this watch, if I had to choose like an actual scene as opposed to little moments, it was the dinner scene. Everything about it was crazy. Like, they order the food and they get a picture of this gorgeous meal, and underneath it are like 3 little things of slop, all different colors. Like, this is what you're eating. Don't believe your lying eyes. You're eating steak. It's super yummy. Like, that was very disturbing. The shoe on the head thing and all the random ridiculous conversation. And then someone, I don't know if it was you or Glenn, mentioned the bomb. And then orchestra just carries on. Everyone just does their thing. They pull out the little partition. We're like, don't look, everything's fine, just keep eating dinner. That scene encapsulated a lot of what was wrong with this world.
Speaking of that scene, now that you brought it up, I hated the waiter so much when I first watched this film. I think this time I watched it and I absolutely loved him. Numero blah. I mean, what the hell? Well, you must say the number.
Yeah, it almost reminded me of was it Meaning of Life from Mr. Creosote in Meaning of Life, and it was like, instead of Mr. Creosote, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Michael Palin played the waiter in that scene, in that little sketch.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And it was like, what would you like? And he's like, I'll have the eggs. I'll have the lot with the eggs on top. Or bring me the bucket with the eggs on top. And he eats it and he blows up. And it totally reminded me of Mr. Creosote. And it was kind of like flipped, right? Mm-hmm. And it was like I was waiting for him. I was waiting for him to do a little something more. Like, I was waiting for him to truly show the disdain for Sam. Because watching this, what I got from it was, you see Sam all the time. Sam has to come to dinner with his mother. It's not a one-off. So going to the dinner, not a one-off. This happens all the time. I can imagine it happens once or twice a week in this guy's life. So the waiter knows who he is and pretends each and every time, I don't know who you are, and stops him from coming in. And it's like, oh, you remember my son. And let him through.
Great snobby waiter scenes in films. I'm telling you, this is akin to, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Exactly.
Exactly. The Sausage King of Chicago? You're the Sausage King? Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
It was one of those. I think the scene that I really enjoyed and I appreciated was when Sam and Jill are riding in the truck and he's professing his love to her. I love you. And she's just like, what the hell are you doing in my truck? Like, get out of my cab. And he's like, I love you. And she stops and she's like, oh, yeah. And then he turns around, the door swings open and she kicks him out. I was just like, yes, that felt good.
You're in my dreams. Well, not how that sounds.
Not how that sounds. That sounds bad.
Wait, how did he think she heard that?
It was so weird. It was one of those conversations that if you fast forward and to have a conversation like that right now would be so bizarre, so inappropriate that it would be taken out of context. Yeah. And which I mean, rightfully so. But it was just funny that he got kicked out. It was all of that, and then obviously she stops it, and he's still there. But it just kind of showed that it's like I'm not going to deal with this. It's like you're a lunatic.
So speaking of that moment, it could have easily gone into my I could have done without that, for our later segment. But I started to realize, okay, well, this film sort of needs this. You need to bridge that gap between these two characters. But I also felt like it happened in such an awkward, weird way. She changed her stance with him so many times from hostile to neutral to I love you. And I don't feel the character earned it at any point, but he got it. And I don't know if maybe we can save that sort of thing for later when we get to the I could have done without that. But that was a moment that I sort of struggled with was, how did she, because she almost killed him, all of a sudden she's now going to relent to this, creepy guy who says he dreams about her and is, camping in her truck. Did anybody notice that, or did you just sort of gloss on past it?
No, I took it from that they were ready to take her down because she's on the wanted list.
But I don't feel like he really explained that to her. I feel like
he didn't explain it, but you have all of the you have everybody in there and all the guards, if you will, right? All there and instantly starting to turn, and it's like, ooh, you're in trouble. Because it was clear she's the only one there. He works for the government. Mm-hmm. So if he's working for the government, they're all up there with her. And it's like, you're in trouble. We need to go. Like right now, we need to go. And he leaves, and it's like, oh crap, I'm in trouble.
Right. When I first saw this film, though, I have to say that I did not understand that they were going after her because of the way they staged that, because he was downstairs trying to go somewhere he wasn't supposed to be, and he ran. So I thought they were chasing him. She just happened to be in the lobby. And when I rewatched it this time, and he walks through with his badge, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, wait a second. Was that intentional? Did they want me to think it was supposed to be Sam they were coming after? I don't know.
Well, he didn't have his badge. And here's the thing. He didn't have his badge downstairs because Jack gave him the suit.
And so which badge did he have upstairs?
And so this was, and I don't know if this was if this was a choice in editing, or if this was just, hey, we screwed up in continuity, because he's downstairs and they're like, where's your badge? He's like, this isn't my suit. And he's trying to figure out where the badge is. He comes running up the stairs and he's got the badge.
Which, did he find it on the way up the stairs, or?
Well, it doesn't say anything, but everybody stops and everybody's at attention because he has his badge.
I know who knows. Tanya.
Tanya, tell us.
Solve this mystery for us.
I assumed that it was because he found it. It was a foreign suit. He didn't know where it was kept. So I didn't see it as a directorial or writing error.
Right. I mean, okay, I'm going to go with that. But I just want to track back with a little bit of logic here, which I probably shouldn't do. He was given the suit, which he put on, right? So he would have had to have transferred that badge himself. So the only answer would be that he bumblingly put it somewhere he couldn't find. And I know we've all done that, right? Like, I can't find my keys. I can't find my keys. And then you realize, oh, they're in this weird pocket. You know? Could it be that?
Or is it Jack's badge?
Ooh.
Because of the fact that, and the reason I just thought of that, because of the fact he goes, it's not my suit. And if you have control of every single guard there, when he went up to information retrieval, it really didn't seem like he was at the top of the food chain.
Well, because he was wearing the wrong suit.
Well, but even then, it kind of begs the question, is that Jack's badge?
It could be.
That was actually my assumption when I watched the film this last time.
I think that actually harkens into another thing that I really love about this film is you're never going to get anywhere in a suit like that. So he, because he's wearing a gray suit that's kind of nondescript. Here, have another nondescript gray suit. God, this film's full of stuff like that. We could talk seriously. I think we could have a 3-hour conversation on little details like this. But we have other segments. Before I do that, I want to ask you guys if there was anything else important about this film that you wanted to mention or bring up before we segue.
Yes, I would like to talk about the terrorism and the fact that I came to the conclusion on this last watching that there was no terrorism at all.
Me too.
It was the frickin'
Central Services.
Sloppy, yes, ductwork idiocy of not knowing how to do stuff.
Oh my
that
God.
caused constant explosions, and the government decided it was a great way to use it to control the people.
I had that same exact thought. I'm so happy that because I was like, do I mention this? Or is this going to just open up a whole can of worms and everybody's going to go like, dude, you're crazy.
You're not crazy, Daniel. You're brilliant.
You don't have to.
I wouldn't go that far.
That's brilliant, Tanya. That's great, because that seriously, it's like, how do you cover up ineptitude?
27B/6.
Yes, which yes, 27B/6. Well, there's a parking violation, right? That's also a parking violation.
No, I did not.
Yes. So there's a parking violation, 27B/6 in Star Wars: The Last Jedi, when Finn and Rose are arrested for a parking violation, and that's what it is. It's 27B/6.
In the online MMO game City of Heroes, I don't remember whether it's a mission or it's somebody on the street that says it. Somebody says, "Oh, do you have a 27B/6?" And you can just catch it if you're running around. And it's one of those things. If you don't know the reference, you don't know what it is. But if you've seen the film, wait a second, what? Of course, they've got all kinds of pop culture references in that game. So,
Yeah, there's, it's speaking of the other like references from going there. If you watch Loki is inspired. So if you think of the bureaucracy and all of like the dystopian elements that are in Loki, it was all like all those design elements were taken from Brazil's Ministry of Information. So if you look at the Time Variant Authority, the TVA, the TVA was built after Ministry of Information.
Got the endless corridors and the busy work going on by the cogs in the machine. Yet nobody seems to have a clue what's really going on. Yeah, absolutely. You can see that. Good point, man. I didn't really even think about it when I was watching it, but now that you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
Some other things, tentacles everywhere.
Was there anything else that you guys want to pop up before we move on to our next segment? I just want you guys to know we're all in this together.
Yeah.
I know that, dude.
So I know Ian Holm from Alien, the original film, as Ash. I know him from Time Bandits, Brazil, The Fifth Element, and lastly, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, because he played Bilbo Baggins. What I didn't catch right off the bat was that he was the voice of Chef Skinner in Ratatouille. And I only found that out by reading up on him for this segment. Where do you guys know Ian Holm from? Tanya, give us your background with Ian Holm.
Yes. Well, anyone who has seen the podcast could probably guess that I'm familiar with him initially from the movie Alien. Hated him, which only means that he's an amazing actor, because if there's an actor and I despise them, it's because they were so great at their role that I can't look at them ever again without cringing just a little bit. So kudos to Ian Holm. And then the only other thing that I majorly remember him from, even though I know I've seen him in a ton of other stuff, is The Lord of the Rings, obviously Bilbo, who sort of made me love him again when I hated him. But yes, he's very prolific and he's fantastic.
Yeah, I think
Excellent.
Time Bandits is where I saw him first, was Time Bandits.
Makes sense.
And then it was Fifth Element. And then, of course, is Bilbo Baggins. And I remember it's like the one time that I got the jump scare was when he was giving the ring to Frodo.
That was creepy.
And he did the like that type of thing. I was like, whoa! I was not expecting that piece. And that just always was just like, it's an earwig that's kind of just in my brain. And that's how that's how I see him. I see him with that freaky face.
I definitely puckered a bit when I saw that. Definitely. That was creepy as hell, man. Ian Holm has a long history, mostly as a British actor. And I say mostly as a British actor because he's been in a lot of American productions, but he got his start on the stage, won BAFTAs and Tony Awards, and he's even got nominations for Academy Awards. But some of the things he's been in, it would just blow your mind. Let me get down here. King Lear. He was in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, Dream Child, Naked Lunch, Madness of King George, The Fifth Element, The Sweet Hereafter, The Aviator. He played Napoleon in 3 different films.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was the elderly Bilbo Baggins. He was not in The Hobbit as Bilbo Baggins, or was he? Did they actually show a clip of him later in that? I don't remember.
I thought was he in there? I thought
they might have used him in that. I don't know. Maybe it was CGI or something. I'm not sure. Or maybe a clipping from the other film. Now I'm just guessing.
Yeah. I don't remember.
The Hobbit wasn't necessarily one of my favorite films of the Lord of the Rings stuff.
Yeah, no, I don't think, if anything, they CGI'd him, I think, because because I didn't see him on there, and I don't think he has any of the credits for The Hobbit.
Well, I can tell you that his appearance was used posthumously via CGI in Alien Romulus 2024.
Yeah, this last one.
Yeah, which I have not seen yet.
I saw it.
Yeah,
it was not terrible, but it was odd. It was definitely, you could tell that it was CGI.
I thought for a second, Tanya, you were going to say, I saw it. And what I can tell you is, I saw it.
You'll save that for another episode.
Absolutely. Let's see. He did Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, was in a lot of Shakespeare productions, but we know him for these films, and he was an amazing actor. Sadly, he died in 2020, and it's from Parkinson's related illness. So what a loss, but great career, and that's our man, Ian Holm.
Could have done without that.
Did you guys have any I could have done without that? I don't have a whole lot in this film because of the nature of Terry Gilliam, and what he brings to the table is always sort of this like farcical, metaphoric imagery, symbolism. I love Terry Gilliam's storytelling, 12 Monkeys, Baron Munchausen. He just has a way of putting things on screen that just are like eye candy, even though he's raping your eyes at the same time. But one of the things I could have done with less of, maybe not without, because I think the daydream sequences are important. I just found them to be a little excessive and a little long at times. For a film that's already as long as it is, I kept thinking, okay, here we go with this daydream, shit again. Even though they did fit along with the story, and I saw the point he was making, I just felt like, let's get to the castle. Can we shorten this a bit? But that's a really minor criticism in a film that is as long as this one is and is out there as this one is. How about you guys? Glenn, did you have a moment in the film that didn't work for you that you could have done without?
Well, I think I have to follow. I'll echo your sentiment on the daydream sequences. At first, it kind of sets the stage for it, right? Mm-hmm. But then he goes back to the very similar. It's like, I'm flying. Here's the same thing. Okay, cut it down. I think we could probably use with 75% less of the daydream sequences. And especially where he's going through and fighting the warrior and trying to do that, which, we can look at because obviously he's fighting his own demons, right? In that, because it shows his face at the end.
That was such an Empire Strikes Back moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like telegraphing it. It's like, yes, I know, I've seen Fight Club. This is Tyler Durden. This is your Tyler Durden that you're fighting. I think those could have been shortened. Mm-hmm. I mean, this film, it's what we got, 2 hours and 12 minutes or something like that. I think we could have gotten creative editing to getting that thing down to like 100 minutes. I think we could have shaved about a half hour. Some of the chase scenes when they're running around, I think some of it can be excessive. Mm-hmm. Even though I love the shots, mm-hmm. It's kind of like we know they're running away. There's some specific things. I think those could have been cut down a little bit.
Yeah. And of course, we're saying this through the lens now of watching this film. I don't know that I had as much problem with it when I was younger, but I also wasn't looking for something in there that maybe would have bothered me. Back then, movies were just movies. I didn't critically look at them and to go, okay, well, what do I need for my podcast this week? But enough about me. Let's talk about me. Tanya, how about you? Was there something you could have done without?
No, there wasn't. I felt like everything in this film worked perfectly. He went for it in such an over-the-top way that you could really get away with anything. And I do understand the length of the daydream sequences. And I think one thing that it made me do, just those moments, is it made me question, like, okay, well, when did he start to go batshit crazy? Like, was he batshit crazy, like, in the beginning? And was he batshit crazy the whole time and we're just seeing something that wasn't actually real? There's a lot of interpretation that can be lent to that, which I think is kind of interesting. But
that's a great point, because what I brought up earlier, where I said this could have done without that moment. The quick switching of her attitude towards him over these moments where, like, he survives her, kicking him out of the truck, but He doesn't fall onto the ground. Somehow he's miraculously hanging on. He's in the back of the truck. And then not long after that, he's on the grill of the truck and survives that as well. So it's very possible that this is all in his head.
Yeah, well, there's that. It is, because, you know, in the end, he comes back, and which the thing that I don't know, maybe it was just an annoying thing when he came in and they're at his mother's house and they're making out, and then he leaves. I'm like, dude, don't leave. I was like, why are you leaving? Don't leave. And he leaves, but he comes back and he's like, look, I've got it. It's official. You're dead. Well, but he comes back and she has the long flowing hair.
Mm-hmm.
And she stops and she goes, well, how about a little necromancy?
Well, and she's behind the flowing, the thing from the bed. What do you call that? The draping. So, which looks very reminiscent of his dream.
Of his dream. And
Yeah.
you start to think, you go, well, did he just have these dreams? Because you saw it in the beginning. He sees her on the screen. He's like, he's looking. And then he comes like this and he's looking. He's having that conversation with Jack, and he looks at the screen again and it's a dude.
Mm-hmm.
And then he walks away, and you see her coming back up to the counter. And part of me, just going right off of Tanya, thinking about that, going, oh yeah, he could have been already crazy, and he's just like, this is the person from my daydream. And it could just be somebody who's random, and he's just randomly attached himself to her.
Yeah, that, or we're just reading into this way too much, and you know. But that's the
what
beauty of it,
films are
right?
for.
Well, and that's what the podcast is for, really. It's like, is there more to this?
It could be. Watch it and, you know, find out for yourself. What do you think?
Yeah, what do you guys think? You're watching this right now, and we're assuming you've seen Brazil. What's your opinion on this? We've had some good comments lately. We'd love to hear from you. Right down there. My Did You Catch That is more of a trivia thing that I found. Since I knew this was going to run long, I didn't come up with a whole bunch of trivia to use here because I just knew we wouldn't have time for it. But 27B/6. It's a nod to author George Orwell's address in Islington, London, apartment 6, 27B, Canonbury Square. Interesting, huh?
Yeah, because wasn't it supposed to be 1984 and a half?
That's what he calls it, yeah, 1984 and a half. Because it's like 1984, but not. It's got enough differences to it. We were talking about the government messages, you know, in the posters, suspicion breeds confidence and things like that. And if you've watched this podcast, you know, Tanya and I have gone on and on and on about Babylon 5. But in Babylon 5, they had, was it the Ministry of Peace? And they had all those posters around, you know, about suspect your neighbor and all this kind of stuff. And it harkens back to this, harkening back to 1984. I just love that sort of addition to a film. Did you guys catch anything maybe that somebody else wouldn't have that comes to mind? No,
but outside of the reach that it's had everywhere, I don't have anything else.
I'm sure there's a lot more, you know, and after I go back and revisit, I'll be like, oh, you know, I could have brought that up, but I could have done that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only thing that I knew that trivia wise is De Niro wanted the role of Jack.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he wanted the role of Jack, but Terry Gilliam had already promised it to Michael Palin. And so he wanted to do the film, and they're like, hey, I have this. I don't know if I could think of De Niro as Jack.
I did hear, or I watched a video, I believe, with Terry Gilliam talking about this production and Robert De Niro coming on set. And he's like, and everybody was just like wondering what it's going to be like because this big star is coming on the set, you know, to play this bit part. And he said it was nothing that anybody could have expected. He was so nervous and just wanted to nail his lines so badly. And he kept flubbing lines and saying, all right, I got this, redo it. You know, he said, but in the end, And he said, and I'm watching the performance from the side. I wasn't looking through the camera, and I'm sitting here thinking, this may not work. This may not work. And he said, but it wasn't until I saw the dailies where I saw what the camera saw and realized how brilliant he actually was, because through that camera, it absolutely works 100%. So that's kind of a cool little thing that I got from Gilliam that I didn't expect, but it's Robert De Niro. I should have.
Yeah, it is De Niro, but I still can't think of him as Jack.
No. You talking to me?
There's nobody else in here.
You are gonna get it.
Tell me what you know.
This is gonna hurt.
Oh, now you're starting to sound like Christopher Walken.
Oh, I am, aren't I? I've got nipples, Sam. Could you milk me? Just so everybody knows, Tanya's laughing on the inside. Actually, her mute button's on. We don't know what's happening. So anyway, moving on. This is where we... Yeah.
We bring in Turbo and Ozone.
There it is. Tanya came alive because she knows poppin' means we're almost at the end. And if you've had a long, rough day like Tanya has, we're at the end is kind of a good thing. So don't let me just, speak for you, Tanya. You can tell everybody yourself.
That's true. I'm very tired. It's been a very long day.
And, I love poking at Tanya, but I better be careful. When you're tired like that, you never know what could happen.
I'm a sweetheart always.
Well, why don't we start with you then? Brazil. How many pops do you give Brazil?
5. It gets 5 hands down. I appreciate that it is so meaty and full of world building and content that every decade that I have watched it, I have gotten something completely different out of it. It is Don Quixote meets 1984, meets The Trial, meets the Gulag Archipelago, meets Monty Python in the best possible way. And you can see all of the literary influences that had such an impact on the film. And you can see in subsequent films how many have been inspired by pieces of this movie. I feel like it is kind of a watershed moment in terms of dystopian films within cinema.
Excellent.
5 pops.
Excellent. All right. With that said, we're going to go to our guest host, Glenn. Glenn, how many pops would you give the film Brazil?
I would give it a 5. Because this film, there's very few films that age well. And this one, just as Tanya said, each decade brings something else. And you rewatch it and you go, oh, this is pertinent to today. Because you can guarantee in 1985, Brazil was extremely pertinent. I mean, we're still in the middle of the Cold War. We're trying to go through that. We're sitting under our desks having nuclear bomb drills, and we're living in a society that feels very dystopian in 1985. And then you fast forward 20 years, and you start to have this information age that we're in, especially with internet, social media. Throw that back in, and you go, wait, everything is recorded. And you start to think of that as, okay, Ministry of Information, what do we have? We have millions of hard drives with all of your information on it. Everything you do, we have it cataloged. And so you look at that, and it's just pointing each time. There's like each decade, there's something else you see from it. And it's like, oh, we should learn from film. The fact that it's so far-reaching in pop culture, and so many people have nods to it in so many different places, it's truly a testament when other filmmakers include Easter eggs from Brazil. It's definitely something where, if you haven't seen it and you're watching this, why haven't you seen it? Go see it. 5 pops.
Well said. And I would echo everything you just said. I mean, this film is one of my favorite films of all time. I'd put it in my top 3. And everybody already knows that Blade Runner is also in that top 3. So you have yet to find out what the other one is. But literally everything you just said right now, what Tanya said, stylistically, I don't need to watch Casablanca. Just put on Brazil.
Yeah, but you're going to miss Here's Looking at You, Kid.
Yeah, you got Here's Looking at You, but he didn't throw in the kid, so I'll give you that.
Oh, that's right. I added that. Yeah.
But yeah, everything. I love everything about this film. I love the characters. Mr. Kurtzman, the little cowardly, office manager. I think Jill Layton's, she's awesome. She's kick-ass and everything is the opposite of his dream. She's not this, flowy-haired woman but later she is. His mom, she was wonderful in Soap, which we are reviewing later this year. And Katherine Heldman is just wonderful actress. And Michael Palin, he's a guy that you cast because he's likable. And that throws you off the trail in this film when you're first watching it. You're like, oh, this is his buddy. It's Michael Palin. Everybody loves Michael Palin, especially when he's got stuff shoved up his nose in Fish Called Wanda. Yeah. But, it's Ken trying to kill me. Yeah. But Brazil for me is a win on almost every level. Even my criticisms of it are so minor that they're almost not criticisms. So, bravo. 5 pops. Yay. We have achieved symmetry. Yeah. And with that, I want to thank our guest host for joining us today. Glenn, it's been awesome having you here, and we'd love to have you back again sometime.
Absolutely.
All right.
I think there's going to be another episode next year.
Oh yeah, that's right. We're definitely having you back for that. That'll be fun. Right. And Tanya, you got anything else you want to add here?
Daniel, I am too pooped to pop.
I believe you this time. So instead of saying what I normally say, I'm just going to let you all know we're all in this together.
Oh, God, no.